coverage clearing, bounce passing, hip checking, ankle breaking from way downtown by a nose thumb sticking show you need to know. Welcome to the Pregame!
Thanks for joining us for our inaugural episode of The Pregame. We are the official podcast of Boxscore and are part of the R8DM Gaming Network. We're coming to you to cover everything in the world of sports video games. It's Wednesday, March 4th, 2015, and I'm your host, Colin Perkins, here along with your color commentator, Philip Stella.
Hey, everybody.
So, Phil, this is actually kind of like our media day. I mean, this is kind of the day before the day before episode 1.
Yeah, this is where we get prepped.
That's right.
We got to tell the media what we're about, what's going to happen, and then we get drafted.
Absolutely. This is the combine, media, this is everything.
Yep, pro day.
Stick with us, guys. So this is episode 0. This is our introduction of the pregame. We just really want to tell you guys who we are, what we're all about, what to expect from the show. So if you're listening to this, you're most definitely a sports gamer. And as you all know, sports video games are a seasonal business. So with that in mind, we'll be coming to you before the start of each new sports season as it marks the release of a new sports video game. So Phil's going to take the opportunity to give you a little overview about the show.
Yeah, Colin, and tell the viewers out there that some of the segments that we're going to feature in some of those upcoming shows are going to be doing things like game previews. We're going to have a segment called the Penalty Box where we take a harsh look at the game, and we're not going to be so nice. We're going to do a pep talk segment where we really just kind of tell you guys about a game that you might have missed or passed on. We'll give you our comments on that. We're going to be doing classic game spotlights. We'll have a little thing that I think is going to be pretty popular. It'll be the exhibition match, and it's going to pit two games of the same sport against each other and kind of, hash it out there. Me and you will go back to back on those. We're going to do a review of the team players and ratings. We're going to discuss that. We're going to do full season simulations on some of these games and kind of figure out where things end up. We're going to do a Boxscore community, which is our community on Facebook, where we do questions of the week. We're going to do a member spotlight, franchise mode updates. Hopefully we'll get that going with everybody. And a feature that I think is going to be probably the crowd favorite, it's going to be the pay up, because sports and gambling are often synonymous with each other. And why not, get a little bet going on between the two of us?
That will be interesting, and we'll probably ask the community to help us with some of our wagers along the way. But
sure.
I warn you, my singing voice is not the greatest, so maybe we could avoid those sorts of wagers.
Don't be modest.
That's kind of a quick overview of what the pregame will be. We'll be coming to you seasonally, as I said before. So now we want to take a chance to kind of introduce each other, who we are as sports fans, as sports gamers. So Phil, talk to us about kind of tell your story about why you're into sports or how you got into sports, and then how that became a love of sports video games.
Well, that story starts way back when I was 5 years old, and I actually moved to Florida. And a good friend of mine, or my first friend really, he played football and baseball. So I immediately started playing football and baseball at the ripe old age of 5 and continued to play them through high school, and just was a pretty good athlete. And, I always, ever since I got my Nintendo system, my NES, I was into sports. So that was just synonymous with, okay, video games. Hey, there's a sports game.
Mm-hmm.
So I do enjoy the sports gaming world because I use games and I use video games to really kind of immerse myself into a world that I'm not a part of currently. And it helps me fulfill some of those boyhood dreams I never reached. Perhaps winning a Super Bowl or a World Series or Stanley Cup or anything like that. So
you can still get there, Phil. Don't give up.
I'm gonna say no, but I appreciate that. So that's really a little bit about how I got into it. How about you, Colin? How did you find yourself within this world of sporting?
Yeah, so I was always kind of playing sports and whatnot as I was growing up. My dad was a huge football fan, so he started me as young as possible with that. Big basketball fan and all that, so I kind of played those all throughout the years. Played a little baseball here and there, but along the way, I was kind of I loved my Legos. I got interested in
Legos.
Computers, and we were at a neighbor's house, and they had an NES, and I'd never seen one before, and they had Kid Icarus and Mario, and I just was hooked as soon as I started playing those games. So
The magical gray box.
exactly. So so where the sports side of things comes in, because I loved playing football, and my dad loved it. So he bought me an NES, and then most of the games that he got were kind of sports related. So I played everything from 10-Yard Fight back in the day, if anybody remembers that game. That game was horrible. I think I even knew it was horrible at that age. I don't think you could even pass forward. You would move everybody all at once, and they would kind of matriculate down the field.
It was indeed a 10-yard fight.
John Elway's quarterback rings a bell. That was one where you could actually pass forward, but the mechanics were just horrible. Again, I think I knew at that time that game was bad, but it was football. It's all we had at the time. And then a little game called Tecmo Bowl came out, and that game was the pinnacle at the time of football games. And I spent so many hours playing that. My dad played me a lot, and I might have whooped him up a couple times. I might have let him win once or twice,
Mm-hmm.
But he was great to kind of be my video game buddy back in the day. So, how about you? Did you play any games with your family growing up?
I did. It was funny because the Tecmo Bowl you brought up, that was one of the first memories I have of a sports game that I was really into. In fact, my uncle came down from Massachusetts to visit, and I believe I beat him. I have a picture of it somewhere, and I'll try and post that in the Boxscore community, actually. It's a funny TBT, so it'll be good. But I believe I beat him 63-0.
Oh, yikes.
in our first matchup, and he kind of said, I brought you some football cards here. Let's do this. So that was some of my earliest memories. And then my family actually used to get together with the neighbors on the Sega Genesis, and there was the PGA Tour golf game for that system. Mm. And it was like the first game to actually feature all these that I remember, feature all these realistic golf simulations. So we used to do a skins tournament with the neighborhood.
Nice.
And this would carry on like whole weekends, and it was pretty fun. It was pretty cool.
That's great.
Yeah.
So why don't we talk about real sports just for a second, just so we kind of baseline with everybody. So who are your teams that you've followed, from childhood on? Like who do you root for in real sports?
See, I was going to kind of plead the fifth on this because I feel like a lot of people are going to hate me.
I hate you.
Yeah. I am, regards to football, I am a New England Patriots fan. As I said before, my family is from New England. I was actually born in Massachusetts, raised here in Florida. But I'm a New England football fan. College football team is actually the only Florida team that I've ever rooted for in my life, and that is the Florida State Seminoles. And I bleed garnet and gold through and through. So that team has been with me for 28 years.
Yeah,
and
you were there they weren't so good back in the early 80s, were they?
No, I was there during the rough times and some good times. So it's been pretty good. We never drifted off into obscurity. And it wasn't all girls' school. So, being from New England, my baseball team is of course the Red Sox. And I'm not a big hockey fan like you, sir, but I do enjoy hockey. I am a Bruins fan when it comes to that sport. And I actually pay attention to soccer a lot more nowadays than I ever did before.
Okay.
And I actually have a couple of teams that I kind of like to watch. I like watching Serie A, which is the Italian league. And I love watching Juventus and the British Premier League, excuse me. I actually root for West Ham United.
Okay, yeah.
And that's all due to Green Street Hooligans. Fantastic movie. Anybody is a soccer fan or not, please watch it. It's fantastic. And that's kind of where I'm at. What about you, Colin? Tell us your fanfare teams.
Yeah, so I've been live in Minnesota. I've been living here pretty much my whole life. My folks are from Ohio, so I got this kind of nostalgia for Ohio teams, or I kind of always have them in the back of my mind. So my front and center is my Vikings, my Wild, my Twins. I'll cheer for the Timberwolves once they're good, but it's not worth the heartbreak at this moment. We have enough
Garnett
bad teams. We have Garnett back. But then big college football fan too, so I actually go to the majority of the Minnesota Golden Gophers football games, and those are lots of fun.
Nice.
We tailgate and everything. So, but always keep my eye on the Buckeyes. My dad's been real happy this last year. Keep my eye on the Cleveland Indians and the Brownies. If I do a franchise mode with a bad team, I usually pick the Browns.
The Brownies.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, nice.
Yes.
Excellent.
Speaking of modes, why don't we kind of dive into what we play in our online modes? So when you pop into a new sports game, what do you usually start with?
Well, I always generally start with the My Player or Be a Pro mode. As we've discussed privately before, I am not a big online versus kind of guy.
Mm-hmm.
I hope to start that way, maybe with some community involvement, because I do enjoy it. We've played a few hockey games together, which I'd rather not talk about. But yeah, I'm open to that. I just never got into that. So the My Player Be a Pro, and I do the franchise modes. I like to take a team through a season. And interestingly enough, whenever I played NCAA football, rest in peace.
Mm-hmm. It's a moment of silence.
Yeah.
Okay, continue.
I always generally pick like a really bad team and play with them, just because I'm so used to watching and playing with, your D1. I'm always the Seminoles, and it's just like, okay, it's the same competition every year. I like to switch it up sometimes, so I'll go pick like a D2 school, or even like a D1, like Conference USA or something like that. I'll pick a school and play with them, and I find that quite fun. How about you,
those are always my favorites with when I played the college. Well,
Yeah.
I played a lot of the college football game, but I would always pick the worst team and try to bring them to glory. That was so much fun.
Yes.
So I think I had a Western Kentucky team that I sunk years and years into, and I finally brought them to the the crystal ball. Yeah, it was pretty sweet. But yeah, I usually dive into franchise mode right away. It's just kind of always hooked me. I've always loved the tracking stats and being able to draft and recruit and sign and all that stuff. I love that aspect of games. Then usually once I get good enough or get a little bored with that mode, then I finally dive into the My Player or the Be a Pro modes, and then I'll dabble with Ultimate Team here and there. So I try to. I don't stick to just one mode. I try to try them all.
Cool.
Yeah. So why don't we just cover off real quick? So we're obviously gamers. Why don't we just cover off on some of the games that we play that aren't sports games, just so maybe we can resonate with some of the fans and make relate to them that way.
Absolutely. I won't go into specifics here just because there's way too many to even talk about, and we're probably drawing on the attention span of our episode 0 listeners anyways. But I like first-person shooters. I like RPGs. As I said before, I'm a big immersion guy. Third-person action-adventure. I'm pretty much all over the board, man. I like pretty much everything. If it's fun, I'll play it. I'll give it a shot. So.
Yep. Yeah, I kind of dabble in the first-person shooter. Halo hooked me with the story, so I loved that game. And I'm kind of a big historical guy, so I love the Assassin's Creed series as well.
Yes.
But other than that, I try pretty much everything. I had a big, long bout with Civilization, so I love those strategy games too. But my computer doesn't actually run those games anymore, so... And I'm not willing to sink in the money. So I dabble in quite a few different genres outside of the sports. So now we just kind of want to take a trip down memory lane. This might be a fun little segment as for our episode 0, where Phil and I talk about, kind of our favorite game and all the sports that we'll cover. We won't go long-winded. We just kind of want to list off a few things, why we like it. So why don't we just kind of dive in? I'll just go in alphabetical order. We'll start with baseball. What was your favorite baseball game up until now?
I was always a huge RBI baseball fan.
Mm-hmm.
I pretty much liked all of their games, so that was pretty much it. I believe the one that I should have fact checked this. Sorry, guys, I didn't fact check this before the episode
your homework
show. But I believe it was Base Wars, which was which was like the robots playing baseball.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, Base Wars. So that was pretty much the greatest thing ever because. Yeah, you could like fight. I mean,
yes.
it was awesome. And like if their stamina's going down, they'd be smoking and catching on fire. Very cool game. So yeah, the RBI baseball games and Base Wars, up until that point. So up until this point.
Yeah, we'll probably do a thorough segment on this in the upcoming episodes when we cover off on the baseball season. But I got to go, for some reason, Ken Griffey Jr. presents Major League Baseball as just... It just hit me at the right time on the SNES. It was these roided out players, and it was so much fun. It had a really good balance, and one of the big things, not a lot of games did this back in the day, is that tracked your season stats. Like there are a lot of games that were released after that game that didn't track your season stats. So that was that game was just so much fun.
Was that the one that they had the big green monster, obviously at Fenway, but like in the home run derby mode? Trying to hit the ball out of the Seattle park, there was like the big blue wall.
Yeah, I think
could
you're
never
right.
hit it over that ever. Anyways, we'll move on.
Yeah, talk to me about basketball.
Well, like you and I think everybody else, NBA Jam, right? Come on,
it's tough to beat that game.
No, it must be the shoes.
Boom shakalaka.
That game was fantastic, and I actually have never been a huge basketball guy. I always enjoy playing the games, but I never have any crazy experiences that, I think NBA Live back in the 95, 96, through 98 area was really good.
Yep.
But more recently I've played NBA 2K12, a couple of years recently, but and that was fantastic just because of the progress they made in that My Player Be a Pro mode. That really turned me on to that. So
yeah, it's funny
we'll see where it goes, but
sorry to cut you off. It's funny that you mentioned the NBA Live series back in the 90s, because that was one of my favorite games was Coach K College Basketball, and it was running off that NBA Live engine, so it had that like diagonal, camera angle going on. But that game was a ride. I played with that with all my high school basketball buddies, and we had a lot of fun playing that game. Football, so this is probably unanimous NCAA football, both of us. We can go on and on about the series, but I've had so many good memories in college and post-college playing that series.
Took it away from us, Colin.
Those greedy bastards. We'll get it back. We will get it back one day.
Damn right. You're damn right.
Hopefully in 16, but we'll see. How about golf?
Golf has pretty much been, like I said earlier, the PGA Tour for the Sega Genesis. That was fantastic, mostly because of the memories. I don't remember the mechanics so much, but I remember it played pretty well as far as the simulation goes. And the Tiger Woods games, I mean, those were fun. How could you not like those? We used to do a lot of drinking games with those.
Yes.
Good fun.
Did plenty of those.
My golf.
Yeah, I'm on board with you with Tiger Woods, and even though it's so unrealistic, being able to spin the ball after you hit it was so much fun.
But he was that good, man.
He was that good.
A Jedi golfer.
So my favorite sport, hockey. I'll just touch on this really quick. I'm not going with what you think I'm going to go with. I'm going to go with NHL 13 because of the connected franchise mode. I had played, a bunch of the years leading up to NHL 13, and that game finally had everything. I could finally play my online franchise with my friends the same way I used to do with my NCAA football online dynasty back in the day. But that game had all the physics, it had all the balance right. Love that game.
Nice. I'm going exactly where you think I'm going. NHL 94, the greatest hockey game ever. Close second, Blades of Steel.
Yes.
Only because of the sound effects when you just bumped into other players. And if you bumped into another player enough, you fought.
And you had energy bars. Oh, so great.
Yes. NHL 94 was fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. I always played as the Kings, and I dominated everyone.
So you're a bigger soccer guy than me. So this might be blasphemous, but I always love playing the FIFA World Cup games. Those games, because I just kind of get caught up in the World Cup because I'm not a huge soccer guy, but I love playing those games. I love, taking either Mexico or U.S. and just going for it.
Yeah, I was gonna say that most like I wouldn't say I'm a huge soccer fan. I'm definitely casual, but recently I've been more into it than just the World Cup. But I'd say that most of the people in this country watch it when the World Cup and the national team is on a big stage. And so why not? The game that comes out with that encompassing, the game encompassing that whole feeling, that's sure, But for me, actually, FIFA 14 was amazing. I'm not a guy who gets the FIFA series every year. I believe I skipped 13 altogether. I had 12. But FIFA 14, even I don't care who you are, if you just picked it up and played it, even if you had never played a soccer game before, it felt so good. It had its problems, but it was really fun, and you can do the customization, which is always great. It had all your premier teams in it, so I loved it.
So I just want to disclaimer this. I don't know if we mentioned this at the beginning of the segment, but these are our favorite games. These aren't necessarily the best games.
Right.
Personal
these are our
opinion. Favorites. We have the most kind of fond memories of these games.
You can't say that I'm wrong. It's my opinion.
Exactly. So a couple more categories to cover off on. Let's talk about racing really quick. For me, Excite Bike is so hard to beat. That game was so much fun, and you could actually customize your tracks. That game was that was a classic game back on the NES.
Truly. I like where you went next.
Cruis'n USA. Yeah, Cruis'n USA. It's classic. It's best in the arcade, but it was a great arcade game. You could smash it everybody. You could pretty much do whatever you want. You had shortcuts and all that. But that game is hard to beat when you're looking for an arcade racer.
Yeah, I was going to say my memories in the arcade of that game were great. My favorite racing game is Road Rash. Easy. Not even a question. The only exception to that is Mario Kart.
Yeah, I thought about listing them off. That's kind of like the default, right?
Yeah, right? Yeah, it's like, who's your favorite video game character? Mario? Yeah, Mario Kart is awesome, but Road Rash was like Mario Kart on speed and with heavy metal music playing in the background. But I want to give a shout out to all the people out there who know one of the best racing games of all time on the SNES, second to these two, Road Rash and Mario Kart, Rock and Roll Racing. Fantastic game. And if you haven't ever played it, get yourself an emulator and play it.
I'm doing that tonight.
Awesome. You better. I'll hold you to that.
I wrote it down.
And we got wrestling next?
Wrestling. So what do you got on wrestling?
Like you, the WWF Royal Rumble for the SNES, it's kind of impossible to beat.
Yeah, that game was so much fun.
It was so good.
I love tossing people out of the ring. It was just great.
Everything about it, like your meter where you're trying to struggle to grapple with the guy, it was fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
I think my favorite person to be in that was Tatanka.
Oh, yes.
And then I think for me, I also want to put right there and just mention it is WCW versus NWO. So good.
So good.
Yes. What's your favorite wrestling game?
You already mentioned it, WWF Royal Rumble. Mine are the same as yours, actually. WCW. It was like one of the first 3D wrestlers.
Yes.
And actually, it felt good.
It did.
It had good combo moves and whatnot. Go on the top rope. It had all the characters in there.
The co-op in it was really fun too.
I've played some of the more recent games, and they're almost the same exact mechanics as that original game. Nothing's really changed that much. Graphics have, maybe they've added a little mechanic where you gotta mash a button or something like that. But the base of the game is exactly the same as that.
Right on. Yeah, that was such a cool game.
what about the kind of the other category? So there's so many sports games, so many sports categories. We can't cover off on them all. What would you consider kind of the other game that you love?
Super Dodgeball.
Yes.
Pretty easy. I friggin' love that game. It was so fun. And then regular Dodgeball also, but Super Dodgeball because it's super.
It was better, right? Because it's super.
It's super. I mean, it's
So
like what's better, man or Superman? You know.
I cannot argue with that.
Yeah, it's flawless logic.
So I think I have IDAR blinders on right now because I can't even think of another other game right now. That game is so good. So I got to go with IDAR. But if you have not played that, it's still free on Xbox. Go pick it up and have a ball.
Get it now. Well, get it after you listen to the show.
Yeah.
But get it.
All right. So just a couple other quick things I want to cover off on before we wrap episode 0, our inaugural pregame episode. So what do you want, Phil? What do you want from the sports industry? We've come so far. We've talked about all this nostalgia. I mentioned 10-yard fight, for God's sake. And games have come from so far up until where we are today. But they're still not perfect. Like, we haven't really seen a 10, rated sports game ever.
Very hard to get there.
What do you want moving forward? Now we're in 2015. Moving forward, what do you want out of sports games?
I think we're in the right direction. Madden 15 highlighted that really well this year. I also think FIFA 14 and 15 highlighted that. I think with 14 was one of the first games they actually used that new engine. And the physics of a sports game are the most important aspect if you're looking for that simulation feel, because if I run into you, I need to feel like I ran into another human being. So those little nuances that they put in Madden, where if you get tackled, you're going to fall a certain way, or no two tackles are the same, or all that stuff makes you feel that immersion and that realism, and I think it just adds to the fun you're having. It's going to add to that satisfaction. Also, just paying more attention to that My Career mode, because I just don't think I know it's probably one of the more obscure modes that people really get into, because you're only controlling your player, but I really feel like there's something there that they just can't ignore it. Just do a little more with it. NBA 2K has been fantastic doing that, especially since you told me about NBA 2K15. It's just keep going with that. Let's keep innovating with that mode. And, add to that kind of that RPG sports feeling that I get from that mode. And that would be so swell.
Well, we're almost at a point now where I think they could release a sports game that is just career mode. That's it. I mean, you have these great, in other genres, you have these deep, immersive, single-player storylines that are, hundreds of hours long. Why can't you bring that same aspect to a sports game? I feel like we're there. I feel like we're ready. NBA 2K is doing a great job with it. But, so for mine, it's kind of along the same lines. I'm sick of my annual releases, my annual roster updates. And with the latest batch of consoles, I feel like the more they're becoming closer to a computer, the easier it will be for developers to, essentially push out updates. So I'm just going to buy into the Madden series, and whatever that cost structure looks like, I bought Madden, and then every year I can expect my roster updates and anything else new that they can cram into that series. So that's really what I'm looking forward to out of the sports genres.
Nice. I don't think you'll ever get that, but that would be nice, wouldn't it?
There's money involved, and
like
they
a
can
season
figure it
pass, basically, for a sports game.
Yeah. I think they can do it. Somebody will do it, and hopefully
Somebody
that person will prove everybody wrong.
Break
right? Exactly.
Yeah.
All right. So right before we wrap the show, every episode we are going to bring to you our pay up segment, where Phil and I make a bet about something ridiculous, and then in the following show we are gonna pay up. We're gonna pony up to whatever the bet was. So what's our bet for episode 0, Phil?
Well, I think there's a genre out there of sports game that neither you and I dabble in too much, or at least too often, and that's the racing genre. I think we both like it. I think we're just kind of waiting for that game to really be like, whoa, I gotta play this.
Well, my problem is I want to be driving. I want my steering wheel. Like I want the full driving experience.
You want the whole deal. Okay.
Yeah, and I just don't want to pay for all the peripherals to get that.
Yeah, for me, it's been there's just too many other things out there when a racing game comes along. I just don't find the satisfaction. I like them, don't get me wrong. And in fact, the game that we're going to be paying up in is Need for Speed Rivals, which is out in the vault for EA Access right now. By the way, sports fans, if you don't have EA Access,
get it.
Good Lord. And you have an Xbox One, totally worth it. We have both played, an hour and a half each, maybe?
About.
Okay. We enjoy the game, but we just haven't sunk any time in it. So we figured it would be best to do our first pay-up bet on this game. We both are inexperienced. We're going to rest. We're going to race best 2 out of 3, and the loser has to pay up on episode 1.
Bring it on.
And,
so our wager for this initial pay up is, since we're such huge racing fans, the loser will need to memorize and recite the last 10 Sprint Cup champions as well as their car number.
Nice.
No cheating.
I did live in North Carolina for a while, so I have the edge here.
You too. You've at least heard of most of the names.
NASCAR country.
All right. With that, we just want to say that we're excited to bring you the pregame. We hope you enjoyed the show, and we want a lot of community involvement with this show. So let us know your feedback. We, as Phil mentioned, we're going to do community member spotlights. We are part of the R8DM Gaming Network and the official podcast of Boxscore. Visit R8DM Gaming .com for more information about the pregame, Boxscore, or any of the other shows and communities that are part of the R8DM Gaming Network. Join Boxscore on Facebook at facebook.com/groups/Boxscore. Or follow Boxscore on Twitter. Our handle is Boxscore Gaming. And that's their show. Thanks for joining us. We will see you online.
Thanks, guys.